Some policies are not loving. Some policies are the epitome of evil. And Donald Trump has a character that rubs about everybody the wrong way. His personality rubs about everybody the wrong way. But he has some pretty dang good policies that seem to oppose the evil platform that has taken over the modern day Democrat Party.
Boom. All right. So we are back on Web Extended, everybody. So Tim, how do you think the episode went we just did?
I thought it went well. I had fun.
I thought it went great too, minus the parts where I found myself stumbling over my words because it sounded intelligent in my head until I tried to articulate it. And then I just realized I'm terribly not as eloquent as you are when it comes to this stuff.
Oh, I don't know about that. I stumble over my words all the time. So
yeah, but you came really prepared. And I was really impressed because, like I said, you were answering questions before I even asked them. I'm like, man, he's really on top of this. So that went really well. So yeah, I just wanted to, for people who are interested in this kind of thing, the political stuff, obviously I'm a big fan of guys like Louder, Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Andrew Klavan, and you've been really outspoken about it on social media. And I guess just first question is like what are Christians to think of in this cringe? Because we're told by some people say, well, you always have to support everything Trump does, right? And you have to support his moral character, and you have to be all for him, or you have to be all against him. And you even have some Christians who will quote things Trump has said, terrible things. And I think I could admit, if Trump had said some of the things that he said about women, if he said it about, like, if he was just some guy I knew and he said about like my sister or my mom, yeah, I'd probably hit him, right? I think we can all acknowledge that. Yeah. But when you're using it as an excuse to not vote against a party that is pro-abortion, pro-socialism, against your Second Amendment right to own a firearm, against free speech by every piece of legislation they've proposed that's hate speech when they support that kind of thing, that's not free speech. A party that's anti-Israel, they're openly anti-Semitic with some of the things they say. They're against Israel, right? As the church, God's chosen people, the Jews. So it seems to me that some of the stuff being against Trump as Christians, it seems just like moral grandstanding to look good to your friends and your neighbors. Anyway, sorry, that's a lot. But what do you think about, conducting ourselves as Christians in kind of the arena of what's going on politically?
Conducting ourselves as Christians. So what are we called to do as Christians? We are many things. Ultimately, Jesus took the entire law and summarized it in 2 simple and easy to remember commands. Love God first, and everybody love everybody. Now, that includes your enemies, at least those who consider you to be an enemy. It's all about love. The purpose of life is love. That's why we exist. And to fail to hit that mark, or I should say to miss the mark of love, is evil. And that's easy to remember because love spelled backwards is evil if you're a bad speller. So it really comes down to love. How do we love? How are, everybody likes the idea of love. Even atheists that I've talked to, and I explain the purpose of life is love. And they're like, oh yeah. And I said, don't you think the whole world needs to follow the commands of Jesus when he's clear that the purpose and the reason why you exist is love? They're like, yeah, amen. You get atheists saying amen to that. What they don't like, however, is the specific policies that Jesus advances, explaining how we ought to love.
Right.
So here we see that there's policies in place. Jesus has policies, right? And policy is important, right? We ought to go out of our way and personally love people. Jesus showed us how to do that with the parable of the Good Samaritan. Even when people groups previously hostile to each other are facing a time where, wow, this person needs help, you're supposed to spend money out of your own pocket, spend your own time, go out of your way to make sure that this person, even if he doesn't like you, even if he wouldn't do the same for you, make sure that they thrive and flourish if possible. Paul says, so far as it depends on you, right? Whatever you can do about it. That could get us into libertarian freedom too. But I'll just say this. How should we love? Some policies are not loving. Some policies are the epitome of evil. And Donald Trump has a character that rubs about everybody the wrong way. His personality rubs about everybody the wrong way. But he has some pretty dang good policies that seem to oppose the evil platform that has taken over the modern day Democrat Party. It seemed to me back when I was in the 90s and first paying attention to politics a lot, that the Democrats and Republicans were pretty much on the same page. It seemed to me. It seemed like everybody loved America. Everybody's going to fight for America. Really, we disagreed on abortion, but even most Democrats were like, yeah, even President Clinton, Bill Clinton was famous for saying, yeah, abortion should be rare, saying it's not good, right? But we got to keep it legal, but it should be very rare, right? And you're like, okay, you
slavery, we should keep it legal, just very rare. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
But I'm just saying, we seem to be pretty much on the same page on so many things. Just maybe some minor economic issues, but the modern day Democrat Party, what it has turned into, its platform. I think John MacArthur has said Romans 1 is its platform, right? Every single evil thing you could find. Hey, let's make that our platform. Yeah. And I'd say it's more than that even, but definitely I think he's right that Romans 1 has become the Democrat platform. Now, I used to be a Republican, and when Republicans did stupid things, back in the early 2000s, shortly after 9/11, the Patriot Act was passed and things like that. And I didn't like the way the war was being handled. And I was like, you know what? That was before Facebook. If there was Facebook back then, you would have seen me calling out Republicans all day long. I left the Republican Party. I said, make me an independent. I can't go to the Democrat side because they're still for abortion, but I actually voted for some Democrats at that point. I came to regret it. But I'm a proud and free-thinking independent now. And so with that said, this election, I'm voting Republican across the board because the Democrat Party's platform has become the epitome of evil. Now, there's several issues that are important to me. I'm not a one-issue voter. Right. I think abortion alone is enough to justify a one-issue voter.
Absolutely.
So let's just do this. A quick thought experiment. Let's suppose that Biden was running against Trump. Well, no. That's what's actually happening. Let's suppose that Hitler was running against Trump.
Right.
And now let's go further and suppose, for the sake of thought experiment, that Hitler, although he had the bad policy of wanting to do the whole Holocaust of Jews thing, every one of his other policies was great. And he was a really nice guy and was very eloquent on Twitter. Well, let's just do this. Let's just say that Hitler was running against Trump and Hitler's platform was exactly the same as Joe Biden's, except
free healthcare, free education,
everything. Whatever Biden is for, you're going to say that's what Hitler was for, except Hitler replaced the abortion
issue
problem with the Holocaust of Jews. Okay. Now, Hitler is a nice guy, isn't stupid on Twitter, right? Just a likable guy, has the exact same policies as Biden, except isn't for abortion, but is for the Holocaust of Jews. Would it not be a moral travesty, in fact, a sin and failure, to not use the power that God's given you with one vote, to use that power to oppose Hitler and the mass murder of Jews? That was around 6 million Jews, right? We're at over 60 million and counting mass murders of innocent human beings right now, babies.
Yeah.
So I don't care how good the rest of Biden's or Hitler's policies are. It is a sin. What drives me crazy is even a lot of Christians saying, well, they're both imperfect morally, so I'm just going to vote for a third candidate. Oh, a third candidate who's perfect morally? Who's that? Jesus isn't running. Okay, well, no, I can't do that, but one that I think is better than all them. Third candidate, even though they've got no chance of winning. No, it's a sin for you as a Christian to let this murder continue. If you weren't going to stop, it would be a sin to not stop Hitler, to throw your vote away, saying, yeah, I've got this limited amount of power to try to oppose Hitler. But nah, I'm going to be on my moral high horse and vote for somebody who's got no shot of winning and throw my vote away, not use my power. No, I think that's a sin. Have fun telling that to the Jews who were murdered. Have fun telling that to the babies that are murdered, saying, oh yeah, I could have helped stop your murder, but I decided I would feel much better about myself to not vote for Trump. Man, I'm sorry. I think that is a sin. Now, that's just one issue. That's abortion alone. Abortion alone is enough to be a one-issue voter. But guess what? We're not one-issue voters. We've got multiple other reasons to vote against Biden and Harris, that Christians should vote for Trump, is what I'm trying to say. I've written a lot lately on critical theory, critical race theory, cultural Marxism. Check the Free Thinking Ministries website for that. But that issue is so big, and it is what's driving the current Democrat Party today. You can have the gospel of Jesus Christ, or you can have the gospel of critical race theory. Those two ideas are antithetically opposed to each other. Check my website, I explain why. But because it's just plain evil, Christians ought to oppose it. So you ought to vote for Trump to stop this evil from taking over. If Biden wins, it's going. Yeah. I mean, it's already flooding our streets, and we're seeing what it leads to. And violent. They might start out peaceful, and only 7% might turn into violence and mass violence and murder and destruction and burning and looting and whatever. Hey, if you had a batch of brownies with, that was 93% great, but it had 7% poop in it, are you going to eat it? No. And it's not the same, because this leads to destruction and death.
Well, that's right, because the lie that the protests are built on, right, of course, is going to lead to people being outraged and burning and looting and all these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, one of the things that's opposed, I mean, obviously, I'm going to oppose evil either way, right? Like, right. If like every time a cop does something evil, I'm going to stand against that. And then every time someone else does a crime, if they're burning or looting or murdering someone, I'm going to oppose that also. Yeah. But the point is like, even just the granting the premises of the protests, obviously I agree with everybody's right to protest, but the problem is you got to still call that out for being built on the premise of a lie, because once you grant the premise of the lie, then of course it's going to overflow into the violence that we've seen. Yeah.
And I'll say this. I mean, I was talking about how abortion alone is enough to make, it should be enough to make a Christian a single issue voter. But I'm saying this whole critical race theory and cultural Marxism stuff, they're related, is so big, because, I mean, if Marxism takes over, guess what? We lose the ability to freely speak as Christians and to freely try to change culture with reason and with truth, right? So if Marxism takes over, which will happen through critical race theory, then you lose your freedom to speak, and therefore lose your freedom to peacefully oppose abortion. So in a sense, this becomes the greater issue, because if you lose your freedom to speak, and the freedom of religion, and the freedom to speak, and the reason to be your freedom to be reasonable, easy for me to say. If you lose that, then you lose any power, any ability to try to save more life. We've got to oppose this. We've got to oppose the Democrat Party, the current. Let's get it back. The Democrat, man, I'm rooting for the Democrats to go back to how they were in the 80s and 90s, right? But they've gone so far left that they're not even recognizable anymore. When I left the Republican Party, I became an independent, but I said, okay, Democrats, I'm giving you a chance to win me over. And you just squandered it, right? You became much worse. There's no way I could vote for a single Democrat today.
Right. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard,
Yeah.
when she was, listen, pro-choice, but not the third trimester, and she was seen by all the other Democrats as a radical
Right.
for not supporting
Yeah,
it all the way up to birth.
Right. Okay. I like with what I've seen from Tulsi. Yeah, she's seen as the pariah of the Democratic Party, right? And she's the most reasonable by far. I mean, wow, it's people like her who could actually maybe unite this country, because I think most sides. Right. I mean, if a Democrat started opposing all the abortion up to birth, and even Obama and Harris, right, Kamala Harris, as far as I understand, voted that if a baby survives an abortion attempt, they're alive, and all they need is care, you let them lay there and suffer and die.
Yes.
That's bull crap.
That's one thing people don't realize. Every single Democratic candidate voted against that, the Born Alive Protection Act.
They do what now?
Every single Democrat. It's not just a few who voted against that. It was you're talking about legislation that was proposed that essentially if babies survive abortion, they're to be given the same medical care as any other baby or infant, and every single Democratic candidate voted against it.
See, I mean, yeah. But if you got somebody like Tulsi there who's saying, hey, yeah, okay, let's keep abortion for the first trimester and oppose the rest, and then also oppose critical race theory, which I think she seems to would seem to be opposed to that kind of stuff. I mean, I could see many non-Democrats choosing to vote for her. But right now, that's not where the Democrat Party is.
Right.
If a Democrat politician gets voted in, they are controlled. And you see this with the Tennessee guys, I think a senator, I can't remember his exact position or his name right now, black guy. And he started speaking, seemed to have some conservative views mixed in with his Democrat Party. And I think they kicked him out. Or I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me on that. I need to go check my sources. Right. But something like that has happened recently. Anyway, it just seems to me that the party in general, the Democrat Party, has been infected with evil. And not only that, because, I mean, both parties have, every human has been infected with evil, but the party is infested with evil at this point, and we've got to oppose it. And the only way to oppose it right now, it's not to waste your vote and vote for a third party who has no chance, right? The only way to oppose it right now is to be smart, be rational, and to support Donald Trump. Not support him as a person. You're not saying, what a great character. No, you're saying, we see your policies. We see that you are appointing pro-life judges, not just to the Supreme Court, but to courts across the country. That is making a difference. And don't let anybody tell you, oh, well, voting Republican isn't going to do anything. Well, maybe not for some Republicans, but why is Planned Parenthood scared to death of another 4 years of Donald Trump? Because he's appointing hardcore pro-life judges to courts across the nation. And when that continues, it's happening now, and as it continues to happen, things change for the better. And especially if we could get another Supreme Court judge or two, that would be huge. But don't let you hear it from other Christians or so-called Christians. Oh, voting Republican isn't going to do any difference when it comes to abortion. Really? Then why isn't Planned Parenthood endorsing Trump?
Right.
Why are they opposed to Trump? Because they are freaked out over the proposition of another 4 years of his presidency. Why? Because of what he's doing. He needs some more time. He needs some more time. And we ought to give it to him.
Yeah, one of the things you said earlier, you're right. Even if Tulsi Gabbard, for example, got elected president, and people don't believe me when I say this, you can actually go Google the actual Democratic Party platform. The actual platform is abortion on demand, taxpayer funded, up until 9 months. So even if she, with her personal position, she would have to do some work to overpower what's actually documented in the platform,
Yeah.
to pass anything like that.
Right. That's right.
And I guess a question real quick, because I've made the same point to friends. It's like, okay, you vote for a third party. That looks great. You can brag to your friends about I didn't vote for either person because they didn't line up with my morals. But guess what? You're not actually doing anything. But what they'll say in response to me is, well, sure, the third party has no chance. But if we always reason like that, it'll never have any chance. If we never vote for a third party because they don't have a chance, it'll never get to a point where it could have a chance. So we kind of have to have this more long-term vision where, okay, we vote for this time, might not have much of a chance, but if we keep doing it, it'll build up over time.
Now is not the time to do that.
Good answer.
We're about to go over the cliff. And so your long term, I mean, it's like if you're driving with somebody and they're behind the wheel, you're on the passenger side, and you get a notification on your phone that the bridge, 100 miles away, but say you're going somewhere that's 150 miles away. And you're like, oh, the bridge is out. Whole bridge collapsed. And he's like, nah, I don't believe that. I don't feel that it's out. My feelings don't tell me that. Like, no, okay. So you start to reason with them, and you can be nice to them for a while, and you've got some time to work with. But as you get closer and closer to the edge of that cliff, and the bridge is going to be out, the time for being nice about things. Jesus wasn't always nice, by the way. Just go to Matthew 23:23 and look at how he talked to the politicians and religious leaders of his day. Wasn't nice at all. It's because sometimes doesn't mean he doesn't love them. Jesus loved everybody. But sometimes the people that we love the most, there comes a time when you're not worried about hurting their feelings anymore. And you just got to give them just plain truth, because they're not listening to anything else. They're not listening to your loving rationality. Or you're trying to reason and empathize. Everybody's so concerned with empathy. Well, okay, empathy is important, but don't sacrifice it for the sake of truth. I see way too many people so concerned about empathy. And let's just care about their feelings. Well, their feelings are going to kill them and the rest of the country, right? You got to speak truth. Be loving. Right. But sometimes when you're about to go off the cliff, I'd say at that point, look at how Jesus talked to the religious and political leaders of his day. And I said, man, you're free to be like Jesus in that scenario. You don't always have to be so concerned with coddling their poor little hearts. You should, right? There's a time to do that, and you should do it. But man, when you're about to go off the cliff, no, you don't act like that. And we're about to go off the cliff, right? To say, a long-term solution is to keep voting. You're going to lose your right to vote if Marxism takes over, right? You're going to lose right? If Marxism takes over, let's just say if the Democratic Party, if Biden wins, and then, the critical race theorists and the Marxists that are driving the Democrat Party really get control, then you don't have any more long-term goals, right? You are now controlled by the state, and say goodbye to free elections in the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And real quick before we go, I do want to just mention 2 videos to people, because when I was introduced to postmodernism kind of early on in my apologetics career, it's kind of just easily dismissed often by apologists. It's kind of like, postmodernism, that's the belief that there is no truth. But of course, if there is no truth, that's self-defeating. It's kind of almost pushed aside as a kind of self-defeating worldview. Yeah. But I think one of the things that Jordan Peterson brilliantly points out is how it's kind of allied itself, postmodernism, with kind of cultural Marxism now. Yeah. So 2 videos I recommend people watch. One is Jordan Peterson. It's called Identity, Politics, and the Marxist Lie of White Privilege. And then the other would be his debate he had with Slavoj Žižek. So just Google Jordan Peterson versus Slavoj Žižek. I think those are 2 great places for people to go to kind of deal with these things. So yeah, I definitely really appreciate you, coming on and talk about that kind of stuff, because it's stuff I want to kind of just yell at some of my Christian friends on Facebook sometimes. But instead, I'll share this video with them because you're much more articulate about it and smarter than I am. So, Tim, thank you so much for being here, brother. And we'll definitely do this again sometime soon.
All right. Sounds good, man.